I'm Madeline Matthews, 25 years old, and I grew up believing wealth meant worth. My parents' sprawling Connecticut home housed designer furniture, but zero affection. With my finance degree and investment banking job, I learned how money flows through systems and people. I plan my birthday like I plan my life, with reasonable expectations. Never did I imagine my father would call me nothing but a burden before throwing me out into the rain, or that my expertise would become my greatest weapon. Before I tell you how my life imploded on what should have been a celebration, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like button if you've ever felt discarded by the people who should love you most. Growing up in Fairfield County, Connecticut meant living inside a postcard of American prosperity. Our colonial-style house sat on a manicured acre lot with perfectly trimmed hedges and seasonal flower displays that my mother Barbara supervised with military precision. My father Richard, a sales executive for a pharmaceutical company, made sure we had the right cars in the driveway. Always new models, always luxury brands. From the outside, the Matthews family appeared to have everything. Inside those walls, though, warmth was as scarce as dust on our spotless surfaces. My parents measured love and achievements, not emotions. A 98% on a test would prompt the inevitable question, what happened to the other 2%? Piano recitals weren't opportunities for joy, but evaluations of my worth. I learned early that the Matthews family currency was perfection, and I was perpetually in debt. Madeline, my mother would say while examining my report card, the Stevenson's daughter got accepted to Yale early decision. Have you started thinking about college applications? I was 13 at the time. What neighbors and country club acquaintances never saw was how my parents financed our showcase life. Behind the facade of prosperity, credit cards were maxed out. Loans were taken to pay other loans. The mortgage was refinanced twice. My father's commission-based income was irregular, but their spending never adjusted accordingly. During lean months, arguments erupted behind closed doors, but the country club membership was never canceled. I pursued finance partly as self-preservation. If I understood money, perhaps I could understand my parents. My degree from NYU and subsequent position at Allen and Barrett Investment Group earned rare nods of approval. Now that's something to mention at the club, my father said at my graduation, patting my shoulder with the most affection he'd shown in years. When I moved to my own apartment in the city, I maintained contact, visiting monthly for obligatory dinners where my mother critiqued everything from my hairstyle to my career choices. Investment banking is so demanding, Madeline. You'll never meet a husband working those hours, she'd say, ignoring that I was the youngest team member to manage a multi-million-dollar portfolio. Despite everything, I kept hoping for their approval. When my father called about their mortgage being temporarily tight last year, I transferred $30,000 from my savings without hesitation. Just until the next commission check, he promised. That money joined the black hole of their finances, never discussed again. The bizarre thing about dysfunctional family dynamics is how normal they seem when you're inside them. My friend Olivia once witnessed my mother's cutting remarks during lunch and looked horrified. "How do you just sit there and take that?" she asked afterward. I had no answer. It was like asking a fish how it breathes underwater. When a pipe burst in my Manhattan apartment building 3 months ago, leaving the units uninhabitable during repairs, moving back to my childhood home temporarily seemed practical. At 31, Whitney, the building manager, estimated 6 to 8 weeks of work. "We'll reimburse reasonable accommodation costs," she assured residents. Rather than waste money on expensive New York hotels, I packed essentials and drove to Connecticut. My parents' reaction was tepid at best. "I suppose the guest room is available," my mother said, as though I were a distant acquaintance requesting charity. "Just don't rearrange anything," my father added, "and we're not adjusting our schedules, so you'll need to work around us." No mention of the $30,000 that had mysteriously failed to be repaid. I established a quiet routine, leaving early for work and returning late, minimizing interactions. When we did cross paths, conversations remained superficial. The Henderson wedding was lovely, though the bride looked a bit heavy in her dress, my mother would report, or my father would complain about neighborhood property values. Never questions about my life, my work, my dreams. I maintained access to their accounts, a holdover from when I'd helped restructure their finances during my college years. Occasionally, I still transferred money to cover their overdrawn accounts, hoping each deposit might purchase a crumb of affection. A financial advisor would have declared me insane for enabling their habits, but family entanglements defy rational analysis. Despite everything, a childish part of me still craved their approval. Each time I visited, I arrived with that small, stubborn ember of hope that this time would be different. This time, they might really see me, and decide I was enough. That ember was still glowing, however faintly, as my birthday approached. My birthday fell on a Thursday that year, and I woke up with a familiar mixture of hope and preemptive disappointment that had characterized my birthdays since childhood. 25 years of experience had taught me to keep expectations minimal. Past celebrations included my Sweet 16, when my parents left for a cruise 2 days before, leaving a card with $50 on the kitchen counter, my 21st, when my father had a business dinner and my mother attended a charity function, both forgetting the significance of the date entirely, and countless others marked by perfunctory acknowledgments at best. Still, something childish inside me refused to surrender hope completely. That morning, I came downstairs to find my mother at the kitchen island, scrolling through her phone while sipping coffee. "Morning," I said, reaching for a mug. She glanced up. "Madeline, isn't today your birthday?" That simple recognition sent a ridiculous wave of pleasure through me. "Yes, it is." "Well, happy birthday. There's some of that coffee cake you like in the bread box. Your father picked it up yesterday." My father had remembered? The coffee cake, from that local bakery I'd mentioned loving, sat wrapped in baker's paper, my name scrawled across the top. For a moment, my throat tightened with unexpected emotion. Against my better judgment, I decided to take the day off work. I called Naomi, my supervisor, explaining I'd use a personal day. "Of course, Madeline. Everyone deserves their birthday off," she said cheerfully. Emboldened by the coffee cake and my mother's acknowledgement, I decided to prepare a special dinner. Nothing extravagant. My parents viewed my culinary interests as wasteful, but a meal that required more effort than our usual minimal interactions. I drove to the gourmet market in town, selecting ingredients for beef Wellington, my father's favorite, roasted vegetables with the herbed butter my mother preferred, and a chocolate mousse for dessert. The day passed in a blur of preparation. I set the dining room table with the good china, arranged fresh flowers, even placed small wrapped gifts at their settings, a limited edition golf club cover I'd tracked down for my father, and a silk scarf from a designer my mother admired for her. Childish, perhaps, to give gifts on my own birthday, but I'd learned early that giving was safer than expecting to receive. 6 o'clock came and went with no sign of my parents. 7 o'clock. At 7:30, headlights finally swept across the front windows. They entered together, my father loosening his tie, my mother removing her designer sunglasses despite the evening hour. "Oh, you're still up," my mother said, as though I were a child past bedtime rather than an adult who had prepared a celebration. We had dinner with the Richardsons. Caroline's son just made partner at his law firm. The carefully arranged table, the cooling food, the small wrapped packages, all registered in her gaze without comment. My father headed straight for the liquor cabinet, pouring 3 fingers of scotch. "Is that food I smell? Did you cook something?" "It's my birthday," I said, the words hanging awkwardly in the air. "I made dinner." A flicker of something, recognition, perhaps embarrassment, crossed his face. Right. Well, we've eaten, but I could sample a little." My mother sighed dramatically. "I suppose I could sit for a few minutes. Though I don't know why you'd go to all this trouble on a Thursday." We gathered at the table, a grotesque parody of celebration. My father drank steadily, while picking at the food I'd spent hours preparing. My mother took microscopic bites, making comments about calories and carbohydrates. Neither touched their gifts. "So, Madeline," my mother said during an uncomfortable silence, Have you thought about when you'll be finding your own place again? Whitney from your building called here yesterday looking for you. Said something about the repairs being finished sooner than expected. The project manager contacted me directly, I replied, trying to keep disappointment from my voice. I can move back next week. Good, good, my father murmured, refilling his scotch. Not that we don't enjoy having you, but a grown woman needs her own space. Speaking of space, my mother added, Cynthia Wellington's daughter just purchased the most charming condo downtown. Of course, she's engaged now, to that surgeon we met at the benefit last year. And there it was, the inevitable comparison, the subtle reminder of my inadequacies. I cut into my beef, perfectly cooked yet tasteless in my mouth. How's work, Dad? I attempted to redirect. He waved dismissively. Commissions down this quarter. Economy's fault, but we're managing just fine. His eyes narrowed slightly. Not all of us have the luxury of playing with other people's money all day. The barb stung, as intended. My job managing investment portfolios required 80-hour weeks, advanced financial knowledge, and constant vigilance. But in my father's narrative, I'd always had things easy. Richard, my mother interjected, you forgot to tell the landscapers about the brown patch near the gazebo. It looks dreadful. I'll handle it tomorrow, he snapped, then turned to me. Your mother wants to redo the kitchen. Again. As if the last $60,000 renovation wasn't enough. The Thompsons' new quartz countertops make ours look positively dated, my mother countered. I placed my fork down carefully. Have you paid off the last renovation yet? A dangerous silence fell. My father's face darkened, but I continued, because I noticed the home equity line is maxed out again. You're monitoring our accounts? My father's voice dropped to a dangerous register. I get notifications because I'm still linked as an authorized user, I explained. And I've transferred money 3 times in the past month to prevent overdrafts. My mother's spine stiffened. Well, isn't that generous of you? Keeping track of our little financial foibles while you rake in bonuses. I'm not judging, I said quickly, though part of me was. I just wonder if another renovation is the best use of what? Our money. My father slammed his glass down. Just because you've helped out occasionally doesn't give you the right to dictate our spending. Occasionally? The word escaped before I could stop it. Dad, I gave you $30,000 last year for the mortgage. I've covered 6 overdraft charges in 3 months. That's not occasional help. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. My mother's face became a porcelain mask, while my father's flushed crimson. Nobody asked you to keep score, Madeline, my mother said icily. I looked between them, suddenly seeing with painful clarity what I'd been avoiding. The mortgage payment I covered. You never used it for that, did you? Neither answered, but their expressions told me everything. What was it this time? I pressed, years of suppressed frustration finally surfacing. Another trip? The country club fees? New furniture no one uses? My father stood abruptly, his chair screeching against the hardwood floor. I don't have to justify myself to my own daughter under my own roof. It's just that I work hard for my money, I said, my voice trembling slightly. I believe in helping family, but there has to be transparency. The look he gave me then, contempt mixed with fury, should have warned me to retreat. But something had broken loose inside me, some dam of compliance and desperate hope for approval that had finally cracked. I couldn't have known then how completely my world was about to change. Transparency? My father's voice rose as he paced the dining room. You want transparency, Madeline? Fine. We spent your precious money on a Caribbean cruise and the down payment for Barbara's new car. Happy now? The casual admission stunned me into momentary silence. All those months of worrying about their mortgage, transferring my own hard-earned savings, living frugally in my own life to help them, while they vacationed in the Caribbean. Richard, my mother warned, but her concern seemed directed at the revelation, not the betrayal it represented. No, Barbara, she wants transparency. Let's be transparent. He turned to me, scotch sloshing in his tumbler. Your mother and I work hard. We deserve nice things. We've earned them. By maxing out credit cards? By taking loans you can't repay? My voice sounded strange to my own ears, stronger, less placating than I'd ever allowed with them. My mother's eyes narrowed. Not everyone needs to pinch pennies and track every expense in little spreadsheets, Madeline. Some people actually enjoy their lives. Enjoying life and financial suicide are different things, I countered, feeling a peculiar calm descend. I've been subsidizing your lifestyle for years while you criticize my choices. Do you have any idea how that feels? Oh, here we go. My father rolled his eyes dramatically. Poor Madeline, always the victim. Always so perfect and responsible while your parents are just frivolous children. I never said. You didn't have to, he shouted, slamming his glass down hard enough that amber liquid splashed onto the tablecloth. It's in every disapproving look when we mention a purchase, every little, helpful suggestion about budgeting. As if we need financial advice from our own daughter. My mother stood now too, her voice ice cold. You've always thought you were better than us, haven't you? With your fancy degree and your investment job. Looking down on our choices while pretending to help. That's not true, I protested, though part of me wondered if there was some grain of truth in her accusation. Had my help come with implicit judgment? I just want you to be secure. We were perfectly secure before you started interfering, my father said. We managed just fine for decades before you appointed yourself our financial guardian. Really? Is that why you called me in a panic last year about missing a mortgage payment? The words spilled out before I could stop them. His face contorted. One rough patch doesn't mean. It's not one rough patch. It's a pattern. You live beyond your means, then scramble to cover it, then do it all again. And now I find out you lied about what the money was even for. We don't answer to you. My mother's voice reached a pitch I'd rarely heard. We're your parents, not the other way around. Parents don't exploit their children, I said quietly. The room went deadly silent. My father set his glass down with exaggerated care. Exploit, he said, almost whispering. Is that what you think? That we've exploited you? Something in his tone made my skin prickle with warning. You ungrateful little. He cut himself off, visibly struggling for control. Do you have any idea what we sacrificed for you? The opportunities we gave up? The vacations we didn't take? The retirement savings we depleted for your education? You chose to have me, I said, standing my ground despite the alarm bells clanging in my head. And my scholarship covered most of college. You paid for 2 semesters at most. There it is. He pointed accusingly. The accountant always keeping score. Always tracking debits and credits like we're just entries in your ledger. Richard, my mother interjected, but her tone had shifted. She wasn't trying to calm him, but to redirect his anger. Remember when we had to skip the Andersons' anniversary cruise because of her dance recital? Or how we drove that old Volvo an extra year because of her braces? They were rewriting history before my eyes. The dance recital they'd attended grudgingly, checking watches throughout. The braces they'd complained about paying for during every adjustment appointment. You're nothing but a burden, my father spat, the words landing like physical blows. You always have been. And now you have the audacity to judge us? The words echoed in the sudden silence. My mother didn't contradict him. Instead, she crossed her arms, her expression closed and cold. I think, she said deliberately, it's time you found other accommodations. I blinked, not comprehending immediately. What? You heard your mother, my father said. We want you out. Tonight. It's after 9, I said stupidly, as if the hour was the most pressing issue. And it's my birthday. Playing the birthday card? My father laughed without humor. You're 25, not 12. And this is our house, not yours. But my apartment isn't ready until next week, I protested, reality slowly sinking in. Where am I supposed to go? That's not our problem, my mother replied. You're so independent and responsible, I'm sure you'll figure something out. I looked between them, searching for any sign of the parents I'd spent my life trying to please. There was nothing, no softening, no regret, not even the slightest hesitation. You're serious? I whispered, the full impact finally hitting me. You're throwing me out. On my birthday. Stop with the birthday theatrics, my father snapped. Pack your things and go. In a daze, I climbed the stairs to the guest room. Surely they'd reconsider once their anger cooled. Surely this was just another of their dramatic episodes that would blow over by morning. But when I emerged 20 minutes later with a hastily packed suitcase, they stood in the foyer, faces impassive. You forgot these, my mother said, thrusting a garbage bag at me. Looking inside, I saw toiletries from the bathroom, books from my nightstand, the jacket I'd left on the back of a chair. Barbara found some boxes in the garage, my father added, pointing to several cardboard containers by the door. For anything else you left. They had been planning this, I realized with sickening clarity. The coffee cake, the brief acknowledgement of my birthday, just enough consideration to lower my defenses before the attack. Can I at least leave these until tomorrow? I gestured to the boxes, my voice barely audible. We'd prefer a clean break, my mother replied. Your key, please. The house key had been on my keychain since college. I removed it with trembling fingers and placed it on the entryway table. Barbara, get her work files too, my father directed. I don't want her having any excuse to come back. My mother disappeared momentarily, returning with the portfolio I'd been reviewing the previous evening. She handed it to me without meeting my eyes. I'll help you to your car, my father said, not as an offer of assistance, but as security ensuring my departure. Outside, the night had turned cold. A light rain had started, droplets catching in the glow of the porch light. I loaded my suitcase and the garbage bag into my trunk, then returned for the boxes. I'll get those, my father said curtly, carrying them out one by one. When the last box was loaded, he turned to me. For one heartbreaking moment, I thought I saw conflict in his expression, some recognition of the enormity of what was happening. But it vanished quickly, replaced by cold finality. Goodbye, Madeline. The door closed with quiet decisiveness. Through the frosted glass panels, I watched their silhouettes retreat into the house, my childhood home, now permanently inaccessible to me. I sat in my car, rain pattering on the roof, shock rendering me immobile. My phone showed 10:18 p.m. Still my birthday, for another hour and 42 minutes. Where does one go when ejected from their safety net? Who does one become when the foundation of their identity, even a painful, dysfunctional one, is ripped away? With numb fingers, I scrolled through contacts and called Amy, a college friend who lived about 30 minutes away. Madeline, she answered, surprised at the late call. Everything okay? No. I managed, my voice cracking. Nothing is okay. Can I come over? As I pulled away from the house, I glanced in my rearview mirror. The porch light switched off, plunging the home into darkness. It seemed symbolic somehow, the final extinguishing of the relationship I'd spent 25 years trying to illuminate with my efforts, my achievements, my desperate need for approval. Rain fell harder as I drove through the night, away from everything familiar and toward an uncertain future I never could have anticipated when I woke that morning. Amy's face registered shock when she opened her apartment door. Madeline? What on earth happened? I stood in her hallway, rain dripping from my hair, clutching my purse and a garbage bag of belongings. The absurdity of my situation hit me all at once. A successful investment banker reduced to a refugee with her possessions in trash bags. They kicked me out, I said, the words still feeling unreal on my tongue. My parents kicked me out. Amy ushered me inside, taking the garbage bag from my hand. Tonight? Just like that. I nodded, following her into her cozy one-bedroom apartment. My car's full of boxes. The rest of my stuff is still at my apartment in the city, but it's not habitable until next week. Okay, first things first, Amy said, switching into crisis mode. Let's get you dry clothes. Then tea. Then you'll tell me everything. 20 minutes later, wearing borrowed pajamas and clutching a mug of chamomile tea, I recounted the evening's events. Amy listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from concern to outrage. So let me get this straight, she said when I finished. You've been financially supporting them, they lied about what they needed the money for, and when you called them on it, they threw you out? On your birthday? Put so bluntly, it sounded even more devastating. I shouldn't have confronted them about the money, I murmured. Are you kidding me right now? Amy set her mug down with such force that tea sloshed over the rim. Madeline, listen to yourself. You're still making excuses for them. It's complicated. I began, falling back on my standard defense of my parents' behavior. No, it's not, Amy countered. It's actually crystal clear to everyone except you. Your parents are toxic, manipulative people who have been using you emotionally and financially for years. Her words hit like a physical blow. They're not that bad, I protested weakly. They just have their own issues with money, and… Stop. Amy held up her hand. I've watched this for years. Remember junior year when they forgot to submit your FAFSA renewal and you almost lost your financial aid? Or graduation, when they showed up late and complained about parking the whole time? Or when your dad called you financially paranoid because you wouldn't co-sign that boat loan? Each example landed like an indictment. There were dozens more she could have cited. Holidays ruined by their criticism, accomplishments diminished by comparison to others, emotional support withheld when I needed it most. I know they're difficult, I admitted, but they're still my parents. Being parents doesn't give them the right to treat you like garbage, Amy said gently. Blood relation isn't a free pass for abuse. Abuse. The word stuck in my throat. That's a strong term. Is it? Madeline, you're one of the smartest people I know with money. You manage millions for clients. Yet around your parents, you hand over your savings without question, tolerate financial exploitation, and then apologize for mentioning it. Amy leaned forward. That's what abusers do. They make the abnormal seem normal. They make you doubt your own reality. I stared into my tea, watching ripples form as my hands trembled. Even if that's true, what am I supposed to do now? Cut them off completely? Maybe, at least for a while, Amy suggested. But first, you need to protect yourself, financially and emotionally. Sleep came fitfully that night on Amy's pull-out sofa. Dreams of locked doors and endless rain woke me repeatedly. By morning, exhaustion had settled into my bones like lead. Amy had already left for work, leaving a note with her spare key and instructions to make yourself at home. I called Naomi at work, requesting another personal day, citing a family emergency, with bitter irony. Alone in Amy's apartment, I finally allowed myself to cry, deep, wrenching sobs that left me gasping. Not just for last night's rejection, but for 25 years of striving for approval that never came. When the tears finally subsided, I opened my laptop. Habit led me to check social media first, a mistake. There, posted 11 hours ago, was a photo of my parents. Caribbean sunset views. Starting vacation a day early was the best decision. The timestamp showed they'd posted it during our argument. While telling me I was a burden, they were packing for a vacation purchased with my money. I closed the laptop and called Dr. Pamela Quinn, a therapist I'd seen briefly after a breakup 2 years earlier. I had a family crisis, I explained when she offered an emergency session that afternoon. I need perspective. Dr. Quinn's office hadn't changed. Still the same calming blue walls, comfortable chairs, discreet box of tissues within reach. I recounted the previous night's events, trying to maintain professional composure, but failing as my voice cracked repeatedly. Madeline, she said when I finished, what you're describing fits a pattern of narcissistic parental abuse. Isn't that term overused? I deflected. Everyone calls difficult people narcissists these days. I don't use clinical terms casually, she replied. Your parents have demonstrated several classic patterns: conditional love based on compliance, financial exploitation, gaslighting, emotional manipulation, and extreme retribution when challenged. She explained how children of narcissists often become caretakers, achievement-oriented and hypervigilant to others' needs while neglecting their own, a description that fit me uncomfortably well. The hardest part for many adult children, she continued, is accepting that the loving, approving parents they've been working to earn will never materialize. Those parents don't exist. So, I'm just supposed to give up on them? The thought created a hollow ache in my chest. Not necessarily give up, but recognize reality, she clarified. You can't change them. You can only change how you respond to them. After therapy, I called Terrence Lewis, my financial advisor, requesting an urgent review of my finances. Anything specific triggering this review? He asked when I arrived at his office the next morning. I need to understand my financial exposure to my parents, I explained. All of it. Terrence's expression remained professionally neutral as he pulled up my accounts, but his eyes widened slightly at what he found. Madeline, there are significant transfers to your parents over the past 3 years, he observed. The $30,000 transfer last year, another $12,000 in smaller amounts this year alone, and you're still a joint account holder on several of their accounts. I know it looks bad, I admitted. It's not just bad. It's dangerous, he warned. Being on joint accounts means you could be liable for their debts. And these transfers, were they loans or gifts? Loans, technically, though nothing was documented. He leaned back, concern evident. We need to protect you immediately. First step, remove yourself from all joint accounts. Second, document every loan with proper terms, even retroactively. Third, establish clear financial boundaries going forward. I left with a detailed action plan, feeling simultaneously empowered and gutted. Protecting myself financially from my own parents. How had it come to this? Back at Amy's apartment, I checked my banking app to begin implementing Terrence's recommendations. What I saw froze the blood in my veins. The joint account where I'd deposited money for their mortgage payment, empty. A transfer had been made that morning to their personal account, draining the $3,000 I'd deposited just last week. As the realization of their betrayal crystallized, my phone chimed with a text from my mother. Hope you've reflected on your behavior. When you're ready to apologize, we might consider allowing you back. Something snapped inside me, the final thread of denial that had kept me tethered to the fantasy of loving, reasonable parents. In its place rose a clarity so sharp it was almost painful. I knew exactly what I needed to do. The next morning, I sat at Amy's kitchen table with 3 legal pads, my laptop, and a determination I never felt before. On one pad, I meticulously documented every financial transaction between my parents and me over the past 5 years, dates, amounts, stated purposes, actual uses when I could determine them. The second pad contained a list of all accounts where I was an authorized user or joint holder. The third held my action plan. First call, Patricia Jenkins, an attorney specializing in financial disputes, recommended by Terrence. Based on what you've described, Patricia said after hearing my situation, you have clear grounds to demand repayment of these funds, especially with evidence they misrepresented their intended use. What about the most recent withdrawal from our joint account? I asked. That's more complicated since joint account holders have equal rights to the funds, she explained. But it strengthens the pattern of financial exploitation for the overall case. Patricia helped me draft a formal letter demanding repayment of all loans within 30 days, with detailed documentation of each transaction. The letter was professional, unemotional, and unambiguous, everything my previous communications with my parents had not been. Don't expect immediate compliance, she warned. People who've benefited from financial exploitation rarely give up without resistance. Next, I contacted every financial institution where I shared accounts with my parents. One by one, I removed myself as an authorized user or joint account holder, following Terrence's advice. Each call required explaining my situation to sympathetic but professionally detached customer service representatives. I need to separate my finances from my parents immediately, became my mantra. The credit card accounts proved most complex. 3 cards listed me as an authorized user, cards I never personally used but had helped them obtain during their last temporary financial setback. Removing myself would trigger notification to the primary cardholders, my parents. They'll know immediately, the Chase representative warned. I understand, I replied, surprising myself with my steadiness. By afternoon, I'd executed most of my financial extrication plan. Only one step remained, the most consequential. The primary credit card my parents used for daily expenses had me listed not just as an authorized user, but as a joint account holder, meaning I had equal control over the account. You have several options, the Visa representative explained. You can remove yourself as a joint holder, though that requires consent from all parties. You can close the account entirely, which would require paying off the balance first. Or you can place a temporary freeze on the account pending resolution of a dispute. What exactly does a freeze entail? I asked, an idea forming. The account remains open but cannot be used for new purchases until the freeze is lifted. Existing automatic payments would be rejected. It's typically used when cards are lost or stolen, or when there's suspected fraudulent activity. I thought of the Caribbean vacation purchased with my loan, the empty joint account, the years of financial manipulation. I'd like to place a temporary freeze, I said, my voice steady. There's been unauthorized use of funds. I'll need to ask a few verification questions, the representative continued. This freeze will be effective immediately and will remain until lifted by an account holder. After completing the security verification, I did the same with the other two major credit cards where I had joint holder status. Within 30 minutes, I had effectively cut off my parents' primary means of financial operation. My phone rang almost immediately after. My father's name flashed on the screen. I silenced it, watching it ring through to voicemail. 30 seconds later, my mother called. Then my father again. Then a text from my mother. What have you done to our cards? Fix this immediately. I placed my phone face down on the table, hands trembling but resolve firm. This wasn't revenge. It was self-protection and accountability, concepts my parents had expertly avoided for decades. The certified letter from Patricia went out that afternoon, along with emails to both parents formally documenting all loans and requesting repayment. I contacted the 3 credit bureaus to place fraud alerts on my personal accounts and credit report, preventing anyone, including my parents, from opening new accounts in my name. By evening, the missed calls had reached double digits. Voicemails ranged from outraged demands to tearful pleas. I listened to each one, noting the complete absence of acknowledgement for their actions or concern for my well-being. This is financial abuse, my father raged in one message. Our own daughter, attacking us this way. The irony might have been amusing if it weren't so painful. Amy returned from work to find me still at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers, my expression somewhere between devastation and determination. You okay? She asked cautiously. No, I admitted. But I will be. I showed her what I'd done. The financial separation, the formal demand for repayment, the credit card freezes. Wow, she breathed. That's decisive. Too harsh. I questioned, doubt creeping in. Are you kidding? It's about time, Amy said firmly. They've been financially abusing you for years. You're just setting boundaries that should have existed all along. Later that night, a text came from an unknown number. This is your Aunt Janice. Your parents called hysterical about credit cards being declined at dinner. What's going on? Aunt Janice, my mother's sister, who I saw perhaps once every few years at family gatherings. Of course, they deploy flying monkeys rather than address me directly. I composed a careful response. Aunt Janice, I'm handling a private financial matter with my parents. I appreciate your concern, but this needs to be resolved directly between us. They said you froze all their accounts out of spite, she responded. They're stranded at a restaurant. I thought of the $30,000 they'd spent on cruises and cars while lying to me about mortgage payments. Of the $3,000 they'd emptied from our joint account after throwing me out. Of 25 years of emotional manipulation. They have cash, I texted back. And they're resourceful people. I'm sure they'll manage. Putting down my phone, I felt a curious mixture of guilt and liberation. The guilt was familiar, a lifetime of conditioning to prioritize my parents' feelings over my own. The liberation was new, the heady feeling of finally standing up for myself, of refusing to enable further exploitation. That night, I slept deeply for the first time since my birthday. No anxiety dreams, no waking in cold sweat. Just profound, healing rest, as though my body recognized a burden had been lifted before my mind fully accepted it. Morning brought more messages, including one from my father that simply read, "You'll regret this." Once, such a threat would have sent me into panic, scrambling to appease. Now, I forwarded it to Patricia with a subject line, "Additional documentation of threatening behavior." Over the following days, I settled into a new routine. Apartment hunting for a temporary place until my own became available again. Daily therapy sessions with Dr. Quinn. Careful documentation of every contact from my parents. Whitney confirmed my Manhattan apartment would be ready in 10 days, sooner than expected, but still not soon enough. A week after implementing my financial protection plan, Patricia called with an update. "Your parents contacted a lawyer who reached out to me," she said. "They're claiming the funds were gifts, not loans, and are threatening to sue for harassment and financial elder abuse, which is frankly absurd given they're in their 50s and fully employed." "What should I do?" I asked. "Nothing changes in our approach," she assured me. "We have documentation of the loans, text messages confirming their intended purpose, and bank records showing misuse. Their threats are just that, threats." That afternoon, I received an email from my mother with a subject line, "Reconciliation." Hope flickered briefly until I read the content. A list of conditions I must meet before they would consider forgiving my betrayal, including unfreezing their cards immediately, withdrawing all repayment demands, and providing a written apology. No acknowledgement of their actions. No recognition of the pain they'd caused. Just more manipulation, thinly disguised as reconciliation. I forwarded it to Dr. Quinn with a simple question: progress or manipulation? Her response came within the hour. Classic manipulation. Note how all conditions involve you giving while they only offer to consider forgiving you. True reconciliation would acknowledge harm, express genuine remorse, and propose mutual steps forward. Something shifted in me as I read her words, a final releasing of hope that my parents would ever be the people I needed them to be. It hurt, deeply and completely, but within that pain was also freedom. Freedom from the endless cycle of trying to earn love that should have been freely given. I closed my laptop and walked to the window of Amy's apartment, looking out at the spring evening. People walked dogs, couples strolled hand in hand, a father carried a laughing toddler on his shoulders. Normal family connections that I'd spent a lifetime trying to manufacture with my parents. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. "Your mother is crying herself to sleep every night because of what you've done. I hope you're satisfied with yourself." Once, this would have shattered me, sent me rushing to make amends regardless of the cost to myself. Instead, I responded simply, "All communication should go through our respective attorneys," then blocked both their numbers. The wall of denial I'd built and maintained my entire life had finally crumbled completely. In its place stood something new and unfamiliar. Painful clarity, yes, but also the first fragile shoots of authentic self-protection and self-respect. 3 weeks after my birthday, I settled into a furnished month-to-month rental while waiting for my Manhattan apartment's repairs to be completed. The temporary place was nothing special, a one-bedroom with generic furniture and beige walls, but it was mine, a neutral space untainted by emotional manipulation. Reports of my parents' financial distress began filtering in through mutual connections. Deborah Wilson, my mother's longtime friend, cornered me after yoga class. "Barbara and Richard are devastated, Madeline," she said, her voice lowered dramatically. "They were declined at Westfield Country Club trying to pay their membership dues. Do you know how embarrassing that was for them?" I maintained a neutral expression. "I'm sorry to hear they're having difficulties." "They said you've frozen all their accounts out of some kind of revenge," she pressed. "That doesn't sound like you, sweetie." "It's a private family matter, Deborah," I replied, gathering my yoga mat. "But I appreciate your concern." Similar encounters followed. Family friends, distant relatives, even my father's golf buddies somehow obtaining my contact information to express their shock at my cruel treatment of my parents. Each time, I provided the same measured response, neither defending my actions nor engaging in their narrative. Patricia called with updates regularly. Your parents' attorney is blustering about elder financial abuse, which remains absurd, she reported. I've responded with our documentation of the loans and their misrepresentation. Their position is weakening. Meanwhile, the consequences of financial reality were hitting my parents hard. Without access to their primary credit cards and facing actual accountability for their spending, their carefully maintained facade began crumbling. Whitney, my Manhattan building manager, called unexpectedly. Madeline, I received a strange call from a woman claiming to be your mother, she said. She wanted information about your apartment status and when exactly you'd be returning. I didn't provide any details as per our privacy policy, but I thought you should know. Thank you for the heads up, I replied, unsettled by this new invasion attempt. I'd appreciate if you'd note in my file not to share any information with anyone but me. My parents' desperation reached new levels when my father showed up at my office building lobby. Security called up, explaining an agitated man was insisting on seeing me, claiming a family emergency. I'm sending my colleague Noah down, I told security. Please don't allow that person upstairs. Noah returned looking disturbed. Your father is something else, he said quietly. Kept switching between threats and pleading. Said you've destroyed their reputation and they'll lose everything if you don't unfreeze their accounts immediately. I maintained my composure until reaching the privacy of my office, where tears finally came. Not for my parents' situation, which was entirely self-created, but for the public spectacle they were determined to make of our family breakdown. That evening, Dr. Quinn helped me process the escalation. This is textbook extinction burst behavior, she explained. When manipulators lose their control, they often increase the intensity and visibility of their tactics before accepting the new reality. It's exhausting, I admitted. And humiliating. The humiliation is theirs, not yours, she corrected gently. You're setting healthy boundaries. They're the ones creating scenes and recruiting others to fight their battles. A formal letter arrived from my parents' lawyer the following day, offering to settle by repaying half the documented loans over an extended 5-year period, provided I immediately removed all credit freezes and signed a confidentiality agreement about our dispute. Patricia was blunt in her assessment. This is a lowball offer designed to regain their access to credit while minimizing repayment. The confidentiality clause is particularly telling. They're more concerned about appearances than actually resolving the financial issues. We responded with a counter-proposal. Full repayment of documented loans within 1 year, acknowledgement of misrepresentation, and no confidentiality requirements. They'll likely reject this, Patricia warned, but it establishes our position clearly. She was right. Their attorney responded with outrage, calling our terms punitive and designed to cause maximum embarrassment. We held firm. The situation reached public awareness when my mother posted a cryptic social media update, heartbroken that someone we loved and trusted is turned against us. Family should never betray family. Comments flooded in with sympathetic responses, most assuming she was referring to a sibling or cousin rather than her daughter. I resisted the urge to respond publicly. This wasn't a social media battle. It was a necessary recalibration of a deeply dysfunctional relationship. Instead, I focused on rebuilding my life, working with Dr. Quinn on establishing healthier boundaries, reconnecting with friends I'd neglected while catering to my parents' demands, and preparing to return to my now-repaired apartment. For weeks after my birthday, the unexpected happened. My parents' attorney contacted Patricia requesting a mediation session. They're feeling the financial pressure, Patricia explained, and they're realizing their strong-arm tactics aren't working. The mediation was scheduled at a neutral law office downtown. I arrived first, Patricia beside me. My stomach knotted with anxiety despite weeks of preparation. When my parents entered, the physical change in them was shocking. My father looked older, his normally immaculate appearance slightly disheveled. My mother's designer outfit couldn't hide her drawn expression. They barely looked at me as we took our positions across the conference table. The mediator, a gray-haired woman named Irene Holloway, established ground rules efficiently. We're here to reach a resolution that addresses the financial matters at hand, she stated. Personal grievances beyond these specific financial issues should be addressed in another forum. My parents' attorney presented their position first, a revised narrative where they had misunderstood the nature of the funds, believing them to be gifts rather than loans. They were now willing to acknowledge some repayment obligation, but insisted on immediate restoration of their credit access. Patricia presented our case methodically, text messages explicitly discussing loan terms, bank transfers labeled as loans, even a handwritten note from my father promising repayment once commissions improve. The evidence was overwhelming. During a break, my mother approached me while Patricia stepped out. "Was this worth destroying our family?" she asked, her voice low and bitter. I met her gaze steadily. "I didn't destroy our family, Mom. I just stopped enabling behaviors that were hurting all of us." "So self-righteous," she hissed. "Always the perfect daughter, while painting us as villains." "I don't think you're villains," I replied truthfully. "I think you're people who made choices without considering the consequences. Now there are consequences." My father joined her, his expression stormy. "We can make this very public, Madeline. Is that what you want? Everyone knowing our private business?" "The truth doesn't frighten me," I said simply. "Does it frighten you?" Something flickered in his eyes, recognition, perhaps, that his usual tactics of intimidation had lost their power. Patricia returned, and my parents retreated to their side of the room. By late afternoon, we reached an agreement. Full repayment of the documented loans over 18 months with a structured payment plan, removal of the credit freezes once the first payment was made, and mutual non-disparagement. Not perfect, but workable. As we prepared to leave, my father paused near my chair. "You didn't have to take it this far," he said quietly. "Yes, I did," I replied. "For all of us." In the weeks that followed, my parents made their first scheduled repayment as agreed. I lifted the credit freezes as promised, though I maintained complete separation of our finances otherwise. Our communication remained limited to necessary exchanges regarding the repayment plan, conducted primarily through attorneys. Curious social connections still occasionally approached, seeking gossip about our family rift. "I heard your parents had to cancel their country club membership," or "Barbara mentioned you're going through a difficult phase." I developed a standard response. "We're working through some private matters. I appreciate your concern, but prefer not to discuss it." Gradually, the inquiries decreased. My parents, faced with actual financial constraints perhaps for the first time in their adult lives, began making adjustments, selling one of their cars, canceling lavish vacations, reducing their social obligations. According to Patricia, who remained in contact with their attorney, they were finally addressing their spending habits out of necessity. A strange, unexpected outcome emerged from this painful process, a lesson in reality for all of us. For my parents, the reality that financial actions have consequences. For me, the reality that I couldn't fix their dysfunction, only my response to it. 6 months after my birthday, I received a card in the mail, the first direct, unmediated communication since our estrangement. Inside, in my mother's distinctive handwriting, "We're making changes. Slowly learning. Not asking for anything. Just wanted you to know." No dramatic apology, no complete transformation, but perhaps the first genuine acknowledgement that change was necessary. I didn't respond immediately, allowing myself time to process with Dr. Quinn's guidance. "It's a small step," she observed. "The question is whether you want to acknowledge it, and if so, how." After careful consideration, I sent a brief email. "I received your note. I'm glad to hear you're making changes. I'm doing well and focusing on my own growth." Not a reconciliation, not forgiveness, but a small opening, an acknowledgement that while the past couldn't be undone, the future remained unwritten. 1 year after the birthday that changed everything, I stood in my own apartment, not the Manhattan one I'd returned to briefly, but a new place I'd purchased myself. A corner unit in a brownstone with bay windows and hardwood floors. It represented more than just a home. It was a physical manifestation of my independence and healing. The journey to this point had been neither straight nor easy. There were nights I'd cried myself to sleep, mourning the parents I'd never truly had. Days when guilt threatened to overwhelm my resolve. Moments when I questioned every decision, every boundary I'd established. Dr. Quinn had been my anchor through the process. Healing isn't linear, she reminded me during a particularly difficult session after receiving a holiday card from my parents that made no mention of our estrangement. Some days will feel like backsliding. That's normal. My professional life had flourished amid the personal turmoil. 6 months after the confrontation, I'd received a promotion at Allen & Barrett, taking on a senior portfolio manager position with expanded responsibilities and a substantial salary increase. Your focus and performance have been exceptional this year, Naomi noted during my review. Whatever personal changes you've made are clearly working for you professionally. Those changes extended beyond establishing boundaries with my parents. I'd become more discerning in all relationships, recognizing patterns of giving too much while expecting too little in return. Old friendships evolved, some strengthened with new honesty, others faded as I stopped being the perpetual giver. Amy remained a constant, having witnessed the worst night and the gradual rebuilding that followed. You're different now, she observed over dinner celebrating my apartment purchase. Stronger, but also softer somehow. Softer? I questioned. More compassionate with yourself, she clarified. You used to hold yourself to impossible standards while making endless excuses for others. Now there's more balance. The repayment plan with my parents continued on schedule. Each monthly transfer arrived punctually, without accompanying messages. Through Patricia, I learned they had downsized to a smaller house, finally acknowledging their actual financial situation rather than the appearance they'd struggled to maintain. 3 months after my birthday, I'd made the difficult decision to establish structured, limited contact. No impulsive calls or visits, no financial entanglements, no holidays together yet, just monthly email updates, brief and informational rather than emotional. My first email had been simple. I'm doing well professionally. My new apartment search continues. I hope you're both healthy. Their response, equally restrained. Thank you for the update. House listing goes active next week. Dad's blood pressure improving with new medication. These exchanges weren't warm family connections, but they weren't meant to be. Not yet, perhaps not ever. They were controlled points of contact that acknowledged our biological connection without exposing me to further manipulation or them to unrealistic expectations. You're creating a new relationship model, Dr. Quinn explained. Not based on the parent-child dynamic that failed, but an adult-to-adult interaction with clear boundaries. 6 months in, my mother had requested a coffee meeting. After careful consideration and preparation with Dr. Quinn, I agreed to a 30-minute meeting in a public cafe. The conversation remained superficial but civil. No accusations, no pleas for things to go back to normal. Just 2 adults navigating a complex history one careful step at a time. You look well, she'd said as we parted, a hint of genuine feeling breaking through her practiced composure. Thank you, I'd replied. You too. Small steps. Microscopic sometimes. But movement nonetheless. Financial therapy had become part of my healing journey as well. Gabrielle Foster, a specialist in financial trauma, helped me recognize how my parents' dysfunction had shaped my own relationship with money, my hypervigilance about financial security, my tendency to use financial assistance as a substitute for emotional connection. Money was the language of love in your family, Gabrielle observed. Not a healthy expression of love, but the primary way connection was measured and maintained. Working with her, I developed a healthier financial mindset, generous but with boundaries, responsible but not anxious, viewing money as a tool rather than a proxy for emotional worth. My experience led me to volunteer with a financial literacy program for young adults, teaching basic money management skills at community centers. Financial independence is more than just having enough money, I told participants. It's about having the knowledge and confidence to make choices that align with your values and goals. The irony wasn't lost on me, using the very skills that had once been weaponized in my family dynamic to empower others. As the 1-year mark of my birthday approached, I declined my parents' tentative invitation for dinner. I'm not ready for that yet, I wrote honestly. I appreciate the invitation, but I'll be marking the day privately this year. Instead, I celebrated with a small gathering of close friends in my new home. No elaborate preparations, no desperate attempts to please everyone else at my own expense. Just good food, genuine connections, and a chocolate cake with a single candle. Make a wish, Amy urged as I prepared to blow out the flame. I closed my eyes, thinking not of what I hoped would come, but of what I'd already found. Strength I never knew I possessed, clarity that had been obscured by decades of conditioning, and the profound understanding that my worth was inherent, not earned through achievements or sacrifices. The candle flickered out to applause and laughter, the simple joy of the moment washing over me like a cleansing wave. Later, after everyone had gone, I stood at my bay window looking out at the city lights. My phone chimed with a text message from a number I recognized but hadn't saved in my new phone, my father. Happy birthday, Madeline. We're thinking of you today. No demands, no manipulations, no guilt, just an acknowledgement. I typed a simple response, thank you, then set the phone aside. The relationship with my parents would never be what I'd spent my childhood dreaming it could be. That fantasy had been laid to rest, painfully but necessarily. What might emerge instead remained uncertain, perhaps nothing more than the distant, carefully managed connection we'd established, perhaps something new and healthier over time. Either way, I was no longer defining my worth through their validation. The most profound lesson of this painful year had been recognizing that family isn't defined by blood alone, but by respect, honesty, and mutual care. Sometimes the healthiest family connections are the ones we choose and cultivate deliberately, bound not by obligation but by genuine affection and shared values. I'd learned, too, that standing up for yourself isn't selfish or cruel, even when others frame it that way. That enabling harmful patterns hurts everyone involved, including those doing the harm. That real love doesn't demand sacrifice of dignity or self-respect. Most importantly, I discovered that it's never too late to rewrite your story, to recognize patterns that no longer serve you, and create new ones aligned with who you truly are, not who others need you to be. As night settled over the city, I felt a quiet contentment that had nothing to do with achievement or validation. Just the simple, profound peace of being at home in my own life, navigating by my own compass at last. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who couldn't respect your limits? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Each story shared helps someone else feel less alone in their journey. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories about navigating complicated family dynamics. Remember, protecting your peace isn't selfish. It's essential for building the life you deserve. Thank you for being here with me today.